We now have candidates for the Nassau County Legislature from Districts 9, 10, and 11. District 9 is Mal Nathan and Richard Nicoletto. District 10 is Ellen Birnbaum and Helene Sherman. And District 11 is Delia Witten, James Greenberg, and Blay Tarnoff. And to save time, we're just going to go in the order that I just read. So Mal Nathan will begin. You have 2 minutes, and the timekeeper will hold up a sign that says 30 seconds when you have 30 seconds left. When she holds up the stop sign, please finish the sentence that you're in the middle of.
Thank you. Does everybody hear me? Yeah. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mal Nathan. I am a candidate for Legislative District 9. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my family for their support of my efforts, the North Hempstead Democratic Committee, Supervisor Judy Bosworth, the League of Women Voters for their hard work in arranging this forum, and of course, Richard Nicoletto. I have worked for the town of North Hempstead for over 20 years. I am the Chief Bay Constable, a job that I truly love, and which has taught me how government operates and how to navigate through these operations. Nassau residents face a lot of challenges, but we have survived
the same way for the
we are burdened by high taxes, a high cost of living, yet we want to remain. This is where we were born and raised and want our children to live and raise their families. But this is becoming increasingly impossible. I know this firsthand as I've had 2 children move off of Long Island, probably never return. It's just so expensive here. I'm not claiming to have a magic wand to fix these problems. Some of the county's problems were created years ago by people who are no longer in office or probably not even alive. But we are now forced to live with these mistakes and the cost of them. But I do know it's going to take both sides of the aisle to think of ways and ideas to help. We live in a safe area, a beautiful area with great schools, magnificent beaches, wooded areas to explore, world-class fishing and boating destinations, wonderful historic spots to visit, museums, and art. One can work, live, and vacation without ever leaving the island. Yet we lose our educated, energetic, and creative young people to other places. It's a shame. A bipartisan approach is going to be the first step in correcting Nassau's problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nicoletto?
I too would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, and I'd like to thank all of you for coming out on this windy, blustery night. I'd like to thank my colleagues here in government, Ellen Birnbaum, Delia Witten, as well as all the challengers who are here. And New York State has the ignominious distinction of having the greatest number of people who are fleeing this state because of the costs that we have here. It is the worst state in the union for people on a pension if they want to survive. There was a story in Newsday several weeks ago about how millennials are leaving Long Island in droves. And with my adversary Mal, I have the same distinction, is that my son lives off Long Island, my daughter is about to leave as well. We have to make this island, and we have to make our county more affordable. The most important role that government has is taxes. We, in the Republican majority, have voted for budgets over the last 9 years, 8 times, that held the line on taxes. In fact, the portion of your tax bill that now goes to the county has shrunk from 19 to 16%. We have to create jobs that are going to keep our young people here. They have to earn a wage that's going to allow them to survive where the cost of living is so high, the cost of our houses is so high, and we have to provide housing opportunities not just for millennials, but for senior citizens who do not leave our island, but who want to leave their homes, but to move to a place where there's an opportunity to stay in their community. You know, crime has been low in Nassau County. We have one of the safest counties in the country. But we do face challenges, and the new criminal justice reform is going to create tremendous challenges for our county. We have to put the resources that we must have to deal with that, and hopefully together we'll reach those goals going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Birnbaum?
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for holding this forum, and thank you to all members of the audience for coming out and educating yourselves to who your candidates are this year. It's been an honor for me to be representing the 10th District at the Nassau County Legislature. I've been diligently working to address important issues of concern to the residents in the district and in the county. And public safety is, with no doubt, the most important to most of us. And after 7 years of tirelessly advocating for the reopening of the Nassau County Police 6th Precinct, which had been merged with the 3rd Precinct, I am very proud to say we won. In April, I stood proudly on the steps of the precinct building, along with the county executive and the county police commissioner, and the reopening was announced. The precinct is up and running, and the building itself is being totally renovated and will be open again shortly. I have been diligently working to address other constituent concerns, such as road safety. A study of traffic on Middle Neck Road and Great Neck was just recently completed, and there will be public hearings to get input from residents to see what their concerns are and what they can suggest, because we know that our roads are relatively unsafe now, with lots of pedestrian accidents and drivers getting into accidents too. I have helped many municipalities in the district, such as fire companies, villages, secure community revitalization program funds. And with these funds, they've been able to do things such as improve their, beautify the neighborhood. So I would like to continue to do this job and to help the residents. As a ranking member of the Finance Committee and a member of the Budget Committee, I will be scrutinizing the budget and looking for ways to save our taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sherman.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for having this tonight. I'm so happy that all of you came out to see me and to meet me. I'm going to try very hard as somebody who is not the incumbent, but I am the challenger, to try to put my argument before you as to why I would be a very good person to vote for in November. I do not have the ability, as Ms. Birnbaum does, to say, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've opened this, I've done this grand opening, I've stood on the steps of the precinct, because she's the incumbent and I'm not, and I admit that completely. I'm an attorney. I've been living in Great Neck for about 20 years. I like to tell people I'm from the old country, also known as Brooklyn, New York. I came to Great Neck as an adult and as a single mother with a child who had special needs. My son attended the Great Neck schools, and I'm very proud of him at this point. He's a grown person, and I'm one of those people who is paying very high taxes, living in Great Neck in the village of Thomaston, supporting the schools, and yet, because I'm a little bit older now, I don't have a child in the school district. I would like to stay in Great Neck. I would like to stay in Great Neck forever, and the issue that comes before us with that is taxes. All of my predecessors and everybody on this panel is going to say the same thing. Taxes are too high in this county, and it's true. How do we reduce it? Most of the budget are school district expenses and taxes. So that is beyond the purview of the legislature. That's up to the school boards. I think there are things that can be done, however, and if I am elected, I will be happy to try to deal with the school boards, do something to reduce those expenses. But as to the county taxes, I believe that there are duplicative positions. There are things that can be cut, and yet there are things we don't want to cut. Everybody wants safety and police, but I do not think we need separate village police departments, which is duplicative costs, just for, let's say, traffic tickets or traffic enforcements. That's something that I would possibly look to do. Or perhaps make Great Neck one big district. I know that this area also includes areas outside of Great Neck. I could look into that also.
Thank you.
And one last
Thank
thing, I
you.
am independent.
Thank you.
I'm not a political apparatchik. I've never
Thank
had a
you.
political appointment.
The stop sign came up
Thank you.
a
I'm
while
sorry.
ago. That's okay. Ms. DeRigi Witten.
Well, thank you for having us, and the League of Women Voters always does an incredible job with various forums that I've attended. And it's good to see so many people getting involved. I've noticed such a difference in the last few years, and I think that's been a very positive result. I am currently the legislator for the 11th district. I'm running for my 5th term. Prior to that, I was a city councilwoman in Glen Cove. I am very honored to have my parents here tonight, former mayor of Glen Cove and my mom, Dr. Millie DeRiggi. I absolutely also love my job, and I feel that it's my full-time job, and it's a 7-day-a-week job. I have gotten to learn much about our area, as well as serving on the legislature. There are a lot of negatives going on, and sometimes I'm going to try to be a little more positive. We do have a couple of things in the county that I feel good about. Number one, we really attacked the procurement system since in the last. Unfortunately, we had a lot of corruption going on, and we really revamped the entire process so that we know now who's related to who contributed to who, what relations you have. Everything, we really go through a very thorough vetting process for all of our contracts now. I'm very proud to have been part of that along with my other sitting legislators. I also wrote a bill which sounds so basic, but the truth of the matter is I was also ranking on finance and at the time, and I couldn't believe it, but there was no requirement for a maximum on a contract. We had contracts that only mentioned the minimum, and there was no requirement to say how many years the contract was for. So now each contract has to say how many years it's for and what the exact amount is. We've had to send people back with estimate numbers and a number of other blank issues, and it's a small step, but I believe that both fixing the procurement and really straightening out some of our contracts has really made a difference.
Thank you. Mr. Greenberg.
Good evening, thank you. I want to thank first the League of Women Voters for having this event. I think it's wonderful to see how many people are out and are interested in learning about the candidates and their local government. I'm a very proud Republican candidate for county legislator. I'm very happy to say, very proud to say that. I was born in Bogota, Colombia, 45 years ago. I grew up in Roslyn Harbor. I now live in Glen Cove, right alongside my county legislator, Delia DeRiggi-Witten. I love Long Island. I want to serve Long Island. I'm an adoption attorney who's helped create families for over 20 years. I'm a proud partner of my family's law firm. I'm also the director of People Need Caring, a not-for-profit foundation that raises money and distributes money to many causes, including creating orphanages in Colombia and worldwide. I'm also a proud community service member. For 10 years, I've been a board member and now vice president of Glen Cove Junior Soccer. That involvement puts me right on the ground with the children of Glen Cove. I would like to expand many of these different community outreach organizations to tackle issues such as vaping, hopefully never to see recreational marijuana or any other drug and marijuana drugs that lead to further problems. And I think by dealing with the community on the ground, with the young children on the ground, is the way to combat these types of issues. We have all spoken about taxes, cost of living. Of course, I'm there as well, and I want to fix and solve problems and to be part of solving problems here on Long Island and Nassau County. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tonoff.
At the risk of being redundant, I would also like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. The spirit, but to be a little bit different, the spirit of true partisanship is so rare these days. And I think it's remarkable and wonderful that people are, that the League is truly dedicated to hearing all sides fairly. I really appreciate that. My name is Blake Tarnoff. I'm a libertarian. That means I subscribe to a political philosophy based on morality, ethics, fairness, nonviolence, tolerance, and harm reduction. The libertarian philosophy provides a framework to analyze every issue. It may not give the answer to every issue, but it always enables us to ask the right questions. As a cogent philosophy, libertarianism has been around for at least 60 years and has many adherents and think tanks around the country and around the world. Roy Innis of the Congress of Racial Equality, who's worked with us and he's one of our friends, once called it the best kept secret in politics. Among other things, libertarianism holds the promise of ending poverty and government corruption and bringing back civic pride, pride in government, pride in the police, pride in the justice system, and pride in the community. But make no mistake, it proposes a systemic change to the way we do business in government. It is radical, it is revolutionary. One of our revolutionary heroes put it very well when he said that we all share rights that are not given to us by government, but that we hold just due to the nature of being human. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The libertarian movement is strong and getting stronger, and I'm proud to be able to share it with you today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Now, the first question. What are you doing to prevent, or what will you do, to prevent the installation of 5G networks? Because not enough research on harmful effects have been completed yet. And we'll start with Ms. Birnbaum.
This issue I know has been brought before many villages, and I think the town of North Hempstead has also been addressing it. At the county, we have not had any legislation dealing with this as of yet, so I think it's definitely something that has to be looked into further, and we have to have more public input and have hearings.
Okay, next, Ms. DeRidge-Witten.
I have been hearing more and more about this issue, and I think that that's the first step, public awareness and the desire to do something about it. You're right, we don't know enough about it, and actually, God, it had to be 5 years ago, I wrote a piece of legislation just requiring that people were aware of where modems were in office buildings, just because, you know, we all hear everything is safe, but if you're pregnant or if you want to maybe move your desk, a lot of the modems are hidden, and I thought it was a good idea. Unfortunately, that piece of legislation was never brought for even a public hearing. It's been a little frustrating with a few of our pieces. I would like us to have a public hearing on this, and I would be willing to see what we could do, maybe on a bipartisan way to draft it. I've worked with grassroots in Port Washington on a number of other pieces of legislation, including banning fracking waste from being used to melt snow. And we also had our own sewage treatment plants okayed for treating fracking waste, believe it or not. The one in Glen Cove and the two on the South Shore. I'm happy to say that that piece of legislation also passed unanimously, and I'm still grateful to the majority for listening with that, and we'll try it again with this. I will also say, you know, I know the plastic bag issue has been addressed, but environment is something that is not partisan. We cannot take any chances, and we have to really work together, especially with that subject.
Thank you. Mr. Tarnoff?
This is a nuisance issue. It's a property rights issue. It's an environmental issue. It's a pollution issue. And really, this is an example, I think, of when government, the legislature, is actually taking up too much space with this. This is really something for the courts to deal with. People have a right not to have harmful anything come onto their property, and we need to strengthen people's property rights. We need to allow people to complain if things. I have no idea whether 5G networks are harmful or not harmful. I don't know. That is something for the courts to figure out. That is something for people to come forward and say, hey, this 5G network has harmed me, and prove it in court and hold the companies that put those in liable, and get compensation for any injuries. But it's really a court issue at this point, just because there's not enough information, so far as I know, to determine whether or not this is actually something harmful.
Mr. Greenberg.
Thank you. I think one common sense approach may be to look to see what other municipalities, what other government entities are handling this situation. I do agree that homeowners' property rights are the most important to defend as a county legislator, as a civil servant. But again, I would take the common sense approach to begin to research and to look to see what other municipalities are doing and how they're handling the issue. Of course, open public forums, and to go from there.
Thank you. Mr. Nicolello.
Sure, I'd encourage Legislator Richie Whitten to file that legislation again. If it was held up, before my time as presiding officer, we'd certainly have to consider it.
You got it.
The county's role is limited here. It really, towns and villages have the zoning rights. So the county really only encounters this when it's put on county rights of way and county properties. Now the real problem is that there is a specific federal statute that says that this is preempted. The localities are preempted by federal law. There's very limited amount that you can do as a locality. I know some of the villages have, in fact, gone out and prevented them from going forward, and now they're being challenged in court. So I think, I don't know if they'll ultimately be successful, but as a local government, sometimes you have to take a chance, sometimes you have to say no and make them challenge you in court. So I think those villages are doing the right thing. As I said, unfortunately, the real problem is that the feds have essentially preempted, and tied our hands, local government, with respect to regulating these cell towers and nodes and things.
Thank you. Ms. Sherman?
I think that Mr. Nicolello is speaking very wisely as an attorney. And as an attorney, I happen to agree with him. If the United States government or federal laws have preempted local villages or state, that's the law. We need to follow the law. I don't want anything dangerous in our community. And I remember at one point while I was campaigning, someone asked me about that there was supposed to be some cell tower possibly erected in Kings Point. They were concerned about it. And what I told that person as well, I'll tell everybody, if something is dangerous, I'm against putting it up. But if it is not dangerous, but some people are against it, claiming it's dangerous, but they just don't want it where they can see it, we also need progress. What if all of us came in tonight and there was no Wi-Fi, and there was no internet, and no cell phone? Not one person could do anything, make a call, or use a computer. We would not like it. So there is progress. You have to say something for progress. I don't want that to endanger everybody, but unless it's shown that it is dangerous, and studies have been real good scientific studies, then I think it should be permitted.
Thank you. And the next question. What will you do to protect the black community? Excuse me? Oh, did I leave? Mr. Nathan? Oh dear. How did I do that? I do apologize.
Thank you.
You're so far away.
We live in a 5G world. Who in this room does not have a cell phone in their pocket right now? Nope. Okay, 2. But it's probably in your bag. So technology is part of our lives. It's become a necessity. The technology exists to make these items safe. I believe that we squawk loud enough to the federal government, they will listen. We need to place these in places above human level. I see them on water towers, I see them on building tops. Maybe they're less harmful, I don't know that way, but something that we really have to be concerned about, but we need in our lives. So we have to find a happy medium. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thanks. Okay, the next question. What will you do to protect the black community in Manhasset, Great Neck, Roslyn, and Port Washington? Specifically, how will you protect housing for the black community? It's hard for me to read. And those residents who are being pulled out. And we'll start with Mr. Greenberg.
So, look, as a Latin, really Jewish person, I understand about discrimination. I've experienced discrimination in Nassau County. I don't pretend to be this outward Colombian all the time. I'm a very unique background. So in any instance where there's discrimination, whether it's in regards to someone's color of their skin, their ethnicity, their sexual orientation, their religion, or what have you, of course I would do everything I could as a county legislator, and my role is a leadership role, more than anything, to make sure that this is not occurring. To be quite frank, I think that this issue is dealt with in other ways in regards to discrimination in housing, if I understood the question correctly. But I just would be there to be an advocate for anyone who feels that they are being discriminated in regards to housing or any other matter.
Thank you. Ms. Sherman?
I take issue with the particular wording of the way the question is worded, but I understand the question. The housing that the question refers to is really low-income housing, and they use the word black housing. It is not black housing. It is housing for people who do not have as much money, and the way it has worked out, and the writer wrote this, used the word black, perhaps the majority of the people in those situations are African American. It is not black housing. Housing is supposed to be equal opportunity. That is the law. The law needs to be enforced. I wouldn't want to be told I can't live in my neighborhood because they've decided they don't want an American Jew from Brooklyn. We don't like you. You're not one of us. It's the same thing with low income, middle income. I have benefited from living in middle income housing in New York City, part of the Mitchell-Lama program. So I know what you're talking about. They have every right to live anywhere. I don't understand why they would be pushed out. And if I found out that there were being happened and I was elected to this position, I would do everything that I possibly could to protect those people.
Thank you. Mr. Nathan?
Obviously, I care about human rights, but I feel the question is vague. We don't know, were these people pulled out for a reason? Were they evicted? Were the INS come? We are unaware of the details. But people are evicted from every type of neighborhood, not just African American neighborhoods, but, unfortunate things happen. If maybe I was given more of the details, I would be able to give a better answer. But without those details, I really can't comment further.
Mr. Tarnoff?
Well, I would help the black community and any other community by removing regulations and improving the economic status of people and empowering them to control their own lives. People who are wealthy, I would make the black community wealthy. The people who are wealthy are able to take care of themselves, are able to fend for themselves, are able to take control, defend themselves, be ready to handle anything. They can help themselves, they can help others. That's the answer. Politicians will generally fall over themselves saying, if you give me more power and you give me more of your money and more control over your lives, we'll help you, we'll make your lives better. But those very things they insult the economy. They literally tax the economy. The economy is where everything comes from. It's the sun. It's where all value comes from. It's where everybody gets what they need to survive. You cannot help the economy by taxing it any more than you can create a wind-up doll that winds itself when it starts running down. It's just physics. It's perpetual motion.
Thank you. Ms. Birnbaum?
I think this question refers to my district. So I would say that it perhaps is addressing areas where there are older housing that new developers would like to demolish and build newer apartment buildings perhaps and charge more rent. So I think what we're talking about is protecting the rights of the people who already live there. And I am aware there are some lawsuits that have been ongoing to do just that, because they should not, by law, be forced out of their homes so that somebody else could come along and make a profit from their space, more or less. So, yeah, we have laws in our country that protect people from this happening, and that is really what we have to go by. I haven't had anyone complain to me recently about any new problem, but I think this has been ongoing for a while.
Thank you. Mr. Nicolello?
It's 2019. If people are taking actions with discriminatory intent, there are all laws in this country. There's state, there's federal laws, there's county laws, and if this is happening, we need to make complaints to the Human Rights Commission, to the state agencies, the federal agencies, and/or retain attorneys to represent you on this side. The county this year, the legislature 19-0 passed a agreement, the consent agreement with some plaintiffs, that now our community development block grant monies, portion of that we set aside for affordable housing in the county. So that's important. We're also developing model codes, which will be, which every municipality will be given in the county in terms of establishing baselines, again, for when there's development for affordable housing and everything. So progress is being made, but with respect to the specific question, it's illegal if they're doing it with discriminating intent, and they can be stopped.
Mr. Reggie Whitten?
Thank you. I also agree that if these types of things do happen, it's very important to make your legislator aware of it. We do get calls in certain instances, whether people are trying to find housing or other issues, and I just want to mention a couple things. One thing that I'm proud of that we did pass unanimously also, well, we just hired a new director of our Office of Minority Affairs. Nassau County is very sensitive to making sure that all of our residents are treated well, as well as the town of North Hempstead, to be honest. I'm always impressed with the programs they run, and what we're doing with our contracts is we actually mention whether a contract is both for minority and women-owned businesses. If we know what percentage they either employ or owners, that we actually are very happy to see that. We'll consider that a plus when we're looking into the procurement. I also, I was approached regarding a loop bus in Port Washington that we were lucky enough to get reinstated, and I have the money again for next year. Many of the people that were working on Shore Road on the industrial roads were walking at night to get to the train stations. And it was a matter of time before there was going to be a bad accident. And I'm very happy to say that we now have a bus, and it brings them to both Port Washington and Roslyn train stations. So hopefully that will help with economic as well as safety issues.
Thank you. And one more question. What is your first priority if elected? And we'll start with Mr. Tarnoff.
My first priority will be to speak to the legislature and start introducing some new ideas. I know that most of what goes on in the legislature is unanimous, and I know the ideas that they have, they're all very similar. It's there's a chorus, as I said before, of politicians all singing the same song. Give me your money, give me control over your life, let me run this agency or that agency. I would start the conversation. I would start the conversation of going the opposite way, that we need to devolve away from government control. We need to devolve away from government ownership, and we need to cut the tax burden. There are many things that can be done. Tax abatements for school for giving money to private schools. You know, there are a lot of ideas. I would start introducing ideas in the legislature. I would start having people hear what I have to say, and hear some good libertarian ideas, and I think that will help focus people.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Nathan.
The county legislature is made up of very fine, intelligent individuals. I would do my best to get all of these individuals to work together as a think tank rather than be divided. I think as a whole, these solutions can be thought about and can be corrected. And I think that is, you know, as I said in my opening statements, that is the key to making Nassau a wonderful place again. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dirigi Whitten.
Well, first I just want to mention that we're not always lock and step at the county legislature. I think if you've ever seen a meeting, you might agree with that statement. We're very individual, and I'd say everyone there has good intentions, whether or not they're the same ones or not. We really do have strong wills and for something we believe in, and I'm going to give the majority leader a compliment in saying that in the last couple of years, I myself, being in the minority, have found it easier to approach the majority, and I also feel that they do give us a good opportunity to speak our opinions. That being said, there's another major epidemic going on, and that is the opioid issue. You know, we're hearing about vaping, and vaping is also the new one, but when you hear about the deaths that have occurred in our county, it's truly, as a mom of 3 daughters and 1 stepson, it's something that I'm really concerned about. We actually have a program on Monday night, Glen Cove, but it's our kids are really hit with a lot, and not only is it going to be economic, but with everything going on with social media, there's an incredible issue with opioids, and we've done a lot. The town of North Hempstead's done a lot, but there's still a lot more to do. And in my heart, that's one of my #1 missions.
Thank you. Mr. Nicolello?
Thank you very much. And you know, the truth of the matter is that we do pass most things by unanimous vote. We agree on routine with the county, but there are items that we disagree on, and we do so in a civil way. And then after the disagreement is over, we move on. And I want to thank Legislator Dirigi Whitten for those comments. Look, I mean, the #1 issue for me is stabilizing the county's finances. It's time for NYFA to go. We need to get rid of the control board. It's an embarrassment that the county still has a control board, one of the most wealthiest counties in the state, if not the country. We have to continue to stabilize private finances without raising taxes. I mean, obviously, affordability is the #1 issue in our area. So we have to continue to try to manage the county on a day-to-day basis. It's not glamorous stuff. It's not grand strokes, but it's a continuous slog making government work. We're in a system in which many of the costs are pushed out from the state onto the county and pushed onto your property taxes. It's a system that we have, and to the extent that we can improve that system to deliver the services in a more efficient way without hitting your pocketbook, and that's our #1 priority.
Thank you. Ms. Sherman?
If I were to be elected to the county legislature, my priority is to try to be a fiscal conservative and try to cut expenses and try to cut people's taxes as a result. One of the first things that I would do would be look at the budgets that the county legislature directly controls or that the county legislature can impact. I'd like to try to make some inroads into reducing those expenses, and particularly, I mean, duplicative people in government. I find it difficult to believe that everybody in government does a completely separate job, that their job, whatever their full-time salary is, takes a minimum of 40 hours a week to do. I think that we can cut some extra, whatever you want to call it, off of the budget. I know that there are people who earn a full-time salary. I don't think their jobs necessarily take 40 hours a week. I think we can try to combine jobs, try to reduce overtime, try to be very, very specific and careful about the contracts that we award to people, and cutting taxes and making it possible for people to stay in Nassau County is my priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Birnbaum?
Well, I do agree that fiscal management is of top priority, but to talk about something different, I'll mention transparency in government, which is, of course, very, very important. And we are on the right track. We have a new Inspector General of the county. We have a piece of legislation that I was proud to be the sponsor of that says that when there is an appointment made by the county executive, that person has to come before the legislature for confirmation within 6 months. So we have qualified people in all our departments. I believe we need a better technological way of airing our meetings so that people could live stream them and watch them. I would like to improve the committees so that many more of our bills are vetted at a committee meeting and the public could come and discuss and give their opinion. I have held many meetings in the public, and I think it's key to get public input before anything is done. We have to hear from people. We basically have just a handful of people who come to our meetings right now, so we have to improve on that. So I think Nassau County is moving in the right direction, and with good fiscal management, better transparency, I think we're on the right course.
Thank you. Mr. Greenberg?
Thank you. Over the last 8 months, the one thing I've learned is that this is an incredible balancing act. We have to balance the needs of creating contracts. Right now, the Nassau County Detectives Association detectives don't have a contract. We don't have detectives in the 6th precinct. But we need revenue to be able to make good, legitimate contracts with those different agencies and entities. We can all talk about the necessity to control spending, to examine departments, and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is we also have to be upfront with our residents. I'm glad I'm not a politician. When I look at, for a quick example, I look at my father's reassessment, I noticed that he had to pay a tax cert law firm to actually grieve, and they kept 40% of what he received back. It just boggles my mind, in which, is there a link between the tax cert attorneys and what's going on with our tax assessment system? I mean, maybe I'll get a lot of flack for bringing this up and out, but I think that's what needs to be addressed. These are the issues that me, as a non-politician, as a resident tax-paying person of Glen Cove, and my father in Roslyn Harbor, this is why I'm doing this. I want to get out to the people to say, I understand what you're dealing with, and if I'm elected, I will go in there, and if I do the wrong thing, then get me out 2 years later. I'll go back to my adoption law firm.
Thank you. And before the final statements, there are a couple of announcements from our sponsor. First, there's a car in the handicapped area that has its flashers on and has for the last hour. So if you have any idea, if you parked in the handicapped area, you might want to check it out. I haven't gotten that report. If anybody, maybe, Judy, maybe somebody should go out and check the license plate number. You can see it from here? Okay. And while we're checking that out, would you please be aware that there's an error in the biography pamphlet that you all received that was on your seat. It indicated that candidates DeRiggi Whitman, Greenberg, and Tarnoff were in District 10. They are not. They are in District 11, as I mentioned before. So you can correct that in your booklet. And now we'll do the final statements, which are 2 minutes each, and we'll do it in the exact same order as the initial statement, and therefore we'll start with Mr. Nathan.
Well, everybody, I'd like to wrap up by again thanking League of Women Voters, Town of North Hempstead Democratic Committee, Supervisor Judith Bosworth, for this opportunity. My opponent, Richard Nicolello, was always a gentleman. Some of you might realize this is my third try. He's a tough cookie, but my heart is in it. You know, I get my message out, people realize what I'm about. I'm very proud to be able to run for this office. And please give me an opportunity. I know I can do great things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Nicolello.
I too would like to thank Mal and become friendly over his last campaigns. He does, I mean, he serves the town very, very well as the senior harbor master, so he's a good man. We have split government in the county the first time since back when Tom Bellotto was the county executive and Judy Jacobs was the presiding officer. And there has been a tremendous amount of cooperation the last couple of years. We don't read about it as much because it's not as glamorous as when we fight, which we do. But for example, we, within the last year, approved a 19-0 vote. We gave the county the authority to bond up to $400 million for a diversion project to take sewage from Bay Park to Cedar Creek and put it out into the ocean. Major environmental achievement when it comes to hopefully get money back, but that stuff doesn't really make newspapers. When we fight, it does. Even on issues like assessment, we have areas of agreement. Everyone has agreed that the assessment system was, the values were off, they needed to be adjusted, it was unfair, and we all voted to proceed with this project. We have disagreed on some of the way the process has gone forward. We disagreed on some of the notices and some of the transparency and that type of things. But even there, we had a debate the other day. Debated the items, we were unable to override the county executive veto. Within a few minutes, we were back to the business of the county. So that is the way it's supposed to work. The gridlock that you see in Washington does not exist in the county, and this split government, bipartisan government has worked for us, and we'll continue to do what we can for taxpayers in Nassau County.
Thank you. Ms. Birnbaum.
Prior to becoming a Nassau County legislator, I had worked at the town of North Hempstead, and I served as the director of the Office of Intermunicipal Coordination. And that meant I dealt with the many municipalities of government. And as we all know, in Nassau County, there are so many different levels, from your local level, whether you live in a village, if you live in an unincorporated area, then there's the town and the county. So it's very confusing for people to know exactly who does what, whether their road is a town road, a village road, a county road. I have tried over the years as a county legislator to work within the community. I meet with mayors, I meet with community groups, I meet with civic associations, and I think when you get input, as I've been saying, from the community, that's when you really get the pulse of what's going on. You know what the people's concerns are. So I am very honored to serve as the county legislator, and I truly enjoy working on projects such as getting the Saddle Rock Gristmill once again reopened to the public, a Nassau County museum. We've started to work on it during the summer through FEMA grants. As I mentioned before, I'm able to get grants for local groups, and I see PATV has been doing a great job. Thank you for covering this tonight, and tomorrow they're having an official name changing to North Shore TV, and I was able to secure a grant for them to create a new media center. So this is the way we can help the public, and given the opportunity, I would be proud to serve again as county legislator. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sherman.
I would like to thank all of you for coming and listening to all of us, especially me, because I'm thanking you. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters and everybody who was able to put this program on tonight. I am the political newcomer. I am the challenger. I am not the incumbent. So of course, I have an uphill battle. So I'd like to say that if you want fiscal conservancy, and if you would like to try to lower your taxes, please give me your support. I think that the kind of projects that Ms. Birnbaum has mentioned that she's participated in, because she is the incumbent, are very nice projects. But I am far more concerned about what's going to affect us every day, and how is that going to help all of us continue to live on Long Island, in Nassau County, continue to pay our bills. I want to do things to attract small business by perhaps lowering the property taxes on commercial properties so they attract more businesses. And then we have more business income to tax to try to reduce residential property taxes. Ms. Birnbaum did not mention that. In the most populated area of the 10th legislative district is downtown Great Neck, and the stores, most of the stores are closing. The only time you get a new business is a bank or a CVS. I don't think that should be our entire communities. I want to do something to continue to have our way of life be very, very high, which it is. I want our streets to be safe. I want to try to eliminate duplicative government. I want to try to eliminate too many incorporated villages. I want to try to reduce our expenses countywide in the town of North Hempstead, and I want to try to keep our way of life going, keep the streets safe. Let our children be able to stay and live here if we're older. We want to see our grandchildren, and I don't want to be taxed to death. I thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. Ms. DeRiggi Whitten?
Thank you. I want to mention that I have considered this to be an incredible honor to be the legislator in the 11th district, and I do love my job. And some of the projects that we mentioned all do not get the attention, but they do help in many ways. I'm proud of what we're doing with the hub, for instance. We're going to have next generation housing. We're going to help with the economy. Not only is that developer not getting a tax break, which I believe is one of the biggest problems we have, the pilots are really hurting our communities, but he's actually going to be helping the Uniondale School District and the various streetscapes to enhance that area. So there are some positive things. The sales tax now coming into our budget through the internet is also another big plus. It's going to help us with our revenue, which I think really is needed. I have a project in Mannerhaven. Mannerhaven has always been, in my opinion, the jewel that had to be polished a bit. And yes, it's a streetscape, but it's also going to help, hopefully, with the economy, with the flooding. And I don't want to give away too much, but we're making a lot of efforts to save the trees. And I think a lot of people in this room are going to be very happy when they hear something that's going to be announced shortly. So the projects themselves might not sound like they're, maybe you might not feel some of them are 100% necessary, but they have an effect on many different levels. And I do think that there are many opportunities for us to not only be as financially conservative as we can be, and to continue to work in bipartisan. I have to say my marriage is bipartisan, so I deal with it at work and at home. But anyway, it's not an easy job. 84% of the budget goes to through property tax goes to salaries, and it doesn't give us a lot of wiggle room sometimes. But I believe that almost basically all of us are very financially conservative, because I know as a single mom myself for 10 years, you do appreciate every dollar. So that's how I always look at things. So thank you so much for this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Greenberg?
I was going to begin by saying something, nice and rosy, and thank you and all. And by the way, thank you to the League of Women Voters. But let's all remember something. The internet sales tax, that now instead of being able to not have to pay tax on goods that are coming out of from the New York State, unless there was a nexus between the state of New York and that the company that's selling the goods, it's just another tax on us. We're just being taxed again. Okay, so yes, it's a new source of revenue, but realize where the revenue is coming from. It's coming from our pockets. So when you were able to buy the Uggs from Amazon without having to pay 8.5% sales tax, well, now we are. So this is what I'm hearing from people when I go walking door to door in Seacliff and Glen Head and Port Washington. We keep talking about wanting to be able to live here. I want my daughter to be able to come back to Glen Cove and live. But the bottom line is, until we really address the issue that we're being taxed out of Nassau County and really make hard decisions, people are going to continue to move away from Long Island. I don't want to be all negative. I absolutely have lived a charmed life. I'm very lucky and fortunate, and I want others to have that same opportunity. And I'm willing to make decisions and be part of a bipartisan or whatever to make tough decisions, especially in regards to taxes. I thank everyone again for listening to me. Please visit my website if you want to learn more about me and more things in which I really want to say right now. I do have a great deal of respect for Delia. It's okay. We've been known each other for a long time when I ran for city council in Glen Cove. So this is 100% a respectful campaign that I think that we've both had together. There are differences between us, and I would like you to learn them on your own or when I come to visit you at your doorstep. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tarnoff.
End poverty, end government corruption, bring back civic pride, pride in government, pride in the police, pride in the justice system, pride in society. These are some of the promises of libertarianism. Empower every individual to control his or her own life and destiny. People who are in a position to fend for themselves are in a position to help others. People who are dependent on handouts are in no position to help anyone. For those who have ever traveled in an airplane, you know that you need to secure your own mask before you help others. The change will be systemic, radical, revolutionary, and everyone will be better off. Rich and poor, old and young, people of every race, color, religion, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, and personal philosophy. I know systemic change can be worrisome to some people, even if it is only based on the philosophy of the libertarian hero Thomas Jefferson. But a vote for me will not bring about this change right away. Even when I'm elected, I will still be only one voice out of 19, but it will get the conversation started. And part of that conversation is how to transition away from the need for taxation, regulation, and government control to freedom and self-reliance while protecting the rights and reasonable expectations of the thousands of innocent people who have come to depend upon the way things currently are. So even though I can't promise to bring about these changes in my first year, I can promise that the ideas of liberty will be heard in the halls of the county legislature for a change. The days of the 19-0 love fest in the county legislature will be over. Instead, there'll be 18-1 love fest, while we win more converts to the cause. Prosperity, peace, happiness, if that's what you want, then I urge you to look into the libertarian movement and what we have to offer to society. Understand us, join us, and vote libertarian in November. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.